Hey everybody, welcome to Thursday edition of Mystery Wine Blind Tasting. Excited to be with you and actually also have the restaurant open at the same time. So this will be a bit of an experience. And I'm trying it this week with my phone as opposed to the computer in the hopes that the connection is a little bit better as we lost a touch of connection last week. So let me know if it's better for you. That will be my hope, certainly. But Rick's with us, Kathy's with us. Oh, fantastic, good. Hi Isabel, how are you? It's wonderful to have you with us. That's great. And Tran, hi man. I'm not sure if Steven's going to make it tonight. He said he's been having some trouble with his internet. So Matthew, hey man. But no wine. So well, you can do what others have in the past and hope to figure out what we're talking about by way of the comments and the feedback. So good. Tran, thank you for the feedback there. It's looking good. We'll see. Rich is actually with you tonight? Oh, he's off. How good. That's great. Hi, Rich. Rich is usually doing his own broadcast on the nights that we're doing this, and so it's nice to actually have a chance to spend some time with him. And Ann McCarty's with us too. That's awesome. Kate, hi. How are you? And Matt's going to start us off with the first prediction, which is that this is not a lager. You sure? You positive? Good guess. Good guess. You guessed well. Yes. All right. It's a white, so we have a white wine to work with this evening. It is a little bit more golden in color, right? How are you guys seeing this? Are you? What do you think? And Taylor's here. Yep. Hi, man. Taylor Warren's coming in later this evening. That'll be cool. And Steven, the internet just came back on the nick of time. Good, I'm glad you're with us. And Erica's verifying, like we all are, that this is an IPA or a lager. Kathy, am I frozen? I'm not frozen on my side. I'm hoping it's not on your side. It could be a cider, Rick. Always an potential. Jeff, how are you, man? Thank you for the Snickers. All of the Snickers. I'm saving those for a moment when I need that little hangry moment to be overcome by the power of Snickers. But I haven't reached that point just yet. So, and I don't think I'm going to tonight because I have this in my glass. Michelle's there too. Hey. I'm not moving. Can you hear me, Kathy, and just not see me moving? It's frozen on that side. Sorry, folks. Challenging internet issues, huh? Let me see if that's any better. I love how the frozen screen always catches me in the best possible light. Thank you, Kathy, for trying to connect everyone and ask everyone's doing while we're trying to figure this out. I was really hopeful that the phone would work a little bit better. We're about to have a storm here, and maybe that's impacting the connection. Hey, Sharon. Hi. How are you? Welcome on board. And Steven said we're fine. Okay, well, we'll continue on. And hopefully most of you can see me and more importantly, hear me. And if not, my apologies. Try coming back out and coming back in. I just did the same thing. So you've got me as a screensaver. Avert your eyes and let's just go for the wine. All right, so what are you seeing color-wise? Clear? Hazy? I got clear. What are you seeing? Is it pale, medium, deep colored? The last white we had was a little bit more on the pale side of things, but this one's showing a little bit more of a medium quality to it, I think. It's got a little bit of a golden hue, no? Just a little bit. Thank you, Custom Bombs. I'm glad we're live and moving. I'm glad you're here too. And yeah, medium yellow, clear from Isabel. I agree with you 100%. Erica's pointing that out too. Medium to deep, I don't know about deep. Like it's close. It has a deeper color for sure. But think about something that would be more copper colored, really amber, kind of very deep. being more reserved for deep. But this is close. This is definitely close. Golden delicious. Interesting. Nice. Yeah, a touch of gold for sure. It's got a rich profile to it. So, yeah, wow. So it's pretty clean. I think it's clean, right? Clear, medium plus intensity. The color is definitely a little bit golden. And what are we smelling? Is it really pronounced? Is it jumping out of the glass? Remember like the Shiraz last week? It was in the room before it was even in my glass. I could smell it. The quality here is definitely golden delicious. It has an apple quality pretty predominantly. And Kathy, it's exciting. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for sure. Michelle is going, it's pineapple on the nose. Apple and pineapple. That's pretty cool. Hey, Bob, how are you? Sorry about the loss of your pup. Super tough. But Isabel's noting that there's not a lot of intensity on the nose. There's just kind of a powerful punch of that sort of apple quality, whether it's the Golden Delicious Fresh, a little bit of kind of an apple sauce element for me, a warm apple, a tiny bit of an oxidized apple. The pineapple quality is coming through a little bit there too, more like pineapple skin or just kind of a fresh pineapple ripening on the countertop. There's a floral note from Tran. Yeah, man. Passion fruit, citrus, white flowers coming from Kathy. So what should we be flagging as potential grapes right off the bat that we're, again, not rushing to judgment, but we're just saying like, these are the things that we should be considering and need to be considering. Hey, Michelle, how are you? Glad you're joining us this evening. And Eileen's with us. Chardonnay, sure. Chardonnay for sure. We haven't gotten anything by way of the palate to know about acidity, so we should consider Chardonnay. You kind of almost always should consider Chardonnay. It's a variety that has such a span and spectrum to it that you can at least think about Chardonnay in the running. Hey, Ryan and Nicole, welcome. And no, you're not super late. We had a little bit of a difficulty getting started with the technology, so you're right on time. Chablis thrown in there, warm apple with honey as the aroma. Might rule out Chablis, but certainly we should consider Chablis and Chardonnay in general. We should consider something that has that honeyed element and some of that tropical fruit quality, perhaps Chenin Blanc, perhaps Petit Manseng. Kathy noted some floral elements. So that honeyed element, some floral notes, would maybe Viognier. So we're thinking about grapes that have a bit of a thicker skin, perhaps, a little bit warmer climate to get this textural or this color profile. Yeah, Krista, could be dry Petit Manseng. So we got 4 or so grapes. My first thought right off the bat when I first smelled it, before I kind of even put my nose in the glass, I smelled more pear than apple. It's definitely turned more into apple, but it had a pear quality. And whenever I smell pear, I put Albarino on the table from Rias Baixas or potentially somewhere else. Candy's throwing out Vidal. Yeah, Vidal has a full-on spectrum of different flavors we could see, and you can definitely get a color from that. We'll have to check the acid. And the acid's going to help us, I think, kind of lead us one way or the other here. So in that, I mean, if it's super high acid, Isabel, Viognier is probably not the grape that we're going to think about. But if it's more moderate to lower acid and we pick up more floral notes and things of that sort, then maybe we are considering something like Viognier. If it's got some more moderate acidity and not a whole bunch of dimension candy and it's kind of more monolithic, that would be sort of a tell for me for Vidal perhaps. But let's move then, I think, into a few other descriptors by way of the nose. We've got some fruit descriptors for sure. Anything earthy coming out of the nose? I'm not getting any like stone per se, anything mineral, anything wood oriented. Are you getting any spice? Kind of corn, cedars, spices, things of that sort that would be indicative of some quality of oak. I think it may be me reaching. I'm looking just for potential for some little bit of hint of spice, but it's not real predominant. Karina's throwing out gardenia. Nice floral quality there. Let's taste it. Let's taste it and see what we can come up with, whether we verify what we smelled. Something nutty. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, for sure more of the nuttiness and a little bit of that toothpick quality when you chew on a toothpick for a while. That gives you this sort of wood element there. I'm tasting a little bit of that. Tons of acidity, light and clean aroma, fresh from candy. Yeah, I agree, 100% there. It tastes different than it smells. Yes, I agree, Kristen, for sure. Are you saying candy malic acid? Yeah, malic acid versus lactic acid. I think there's a bit of both in this. Malic acid, think of green apple. And lactic acid, think of the acid you might find, say, in milk, for example, which gives you acidity, but it's not something that's so overt that you really think about it. And we don't really think about milk being an acidic drink, but it certainly has that. Craig, you're throwing out Verdejo. Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a potential there, too. That honeyed element that we got on the nose is not as prominent on the palate until the very, very end. Are you getting that, guys? A little bit of a honeyed quality on the end. And is anybody else getting anything grassy? Karina's asking. I'm not getting any grass, but I'm curious what you guys are thinking. I like the idea. Chardonnay for me is still very much in the running based on that first sip. It wouldn't be like my total call based on the nose, but just how it feels in the mouth and what it tastes like as it lingers, the oak usage there. Remember when we had the Suave? The Suave had some of that honeyed element and had some more texture and some color to it. So, and it had some neutral barrel aging. Going back to acid, I'm sorry I walked away from that discussion, but malic acid gives you that tart green quality, and the malolactic transformation in wine is a naturally occurring fermentation process that transforms the malic acid, that really bright, sharp acid, into a lactic acid, which is a little softer and rounder, a bit more creamy. And candy, I think you're saying now you got a little creamy feel on the tongue. I think there's a bit of both, right? There's that really bracing, fantastic acidity on the side of your palate, right? For me, on the side of my mouth, I'm salivating, I'm watering, and I can feel the sharpness of that acid. And then yet, in the middle, kind of above the top middle of my tongue into the roof of my mouth, there is a creamy roundness that's coming from this wine. So this wine has a lot of dimension. Chris is noting maybe that it's a local wine or tastes local. So it could be Chardonnay. We could go back to the idea of Petit Mot saying that was dry. Hi, Amy. Hi, Rebecca. Glad to have you with us. There's a hint of spice. How about the tropical? Any tropical on the palate? We had pineapple before. Pear, Rick was throwing in there. Pretty comfortable ruling out Viognier because it's got that high acid. But let's talk about the finish. Is this a dry wine? And does that help us in any way? It's really acidic toward the finish. I'd say this is dry. It's a dry wine. It has a hint of alcohol at the finish, and that honeyed flavor profile is kind of messing with me, making me think it might have a little residual sugar. And it certainly has a textural quality. It has a viscosity in the mouth that hints at some sugar, some grape sugar weight to it, which is part alcohol, part sugar perhaps, but it's definitely not sweet. So I think it's dry. I agree with you, Candy. Amy's asking about Linden Chardonnay. That'd be interesting. Could be a nice ripe variation on Linden Chardonnay. That'd be pretty cool. The Swanbergs are saying Sauvignon Vert, so a green Sauvignon Blanc. I'm not getting any of that grassiness or any vegetable quality. Excuse me. This is at the same time a riper experience and an acidic experience. And so it's like a multi-pick perhaps. Maybe they have some very ripe fruit, some earlier pick. It's balancing them both out. And drinking it slightly warm. So are we drinking it a little bit warm, Michelle, that it has a little bit more of that sweet tart quality to it. Hey, Tony. Is it a blend? Yeah, oftentimes when there's such a dimension of different things going on, you can certainly think about a blend. For example, per what our initial thoughts were based on the aroma, if we had aromatics and those aromatics then were met with a bunch of acidity, maybe it's a Viognier Petit Malsain blend, for example. That could be very interesting. But I'm not getting the same aromatic quality on the nose, the floral element that was as pronounced. And as I keep swirling it, and I've been swirling it a bunch, I'm getting more of the woody notes kind of coming out of the nose, a little bit more of sort of a buttered bread, and a definite nut element, like an almond skin, maybe a little bit of hazelnut sort of popping out, and I'm definitely tasting that. It's on the palate for me. A nut butter is on my palate. And Rick, thank you for the winemaker discussion there, or the explanation. Yes, we got some potentially that some of this wine is in tank, some of it's in the barrel, and it's giving the overall experience of the wine a little bit of that bright vibrancy and that richness. Remember way back, one of our first wines was an Oregon Chardonnay that had a lot of that dimension too. It had that cool climate quality. It had that ridge. It was from a ridge, and so some of the parts of the vineyard were south-facing, some were a little bit more north-facing, and that dimension and the kind of tension in the wine came thanks to that. And yeah, there might be some lees here, right? There's some extended barrel aging with a little bit of lees contact, per Isabel's comment, and so lees are those yeast cells that die off in the process of fermentation, and they're the fine ones, the smaller lees that are left in the barrel usually, or a tank, left on the wine, or the wine left to sit on the lees. And as that happens, it's a little bit of a preservative, and it also gives you a kind of a creaminess. And so I think we might have a mixture here, perhaps, of some of that leesiness, some of a residual lactic kind of acid, sort of transformation from malolactic. So we might be looking at a wine that is definitely made, as opposed to just sort of being allowed to express itself simply from the vineyard. And that oftentimes goes hand in hand with a grape like Chardonnay, with its dryness. It's given us all those apple elements. It's given us a little tropical quality. It's given us some oak quality, and now more and more so. I think I'm picking up on that. So, what do you guys think? Are you feeling that this is a wine that comes from the New World versus Old World? That was the thought, certainly from Chris, as he pointed out, a Virginia wine, a local wine potentially. But what are you thinking? Yeah, that's nice. It's a type of wine that's super fun, right? Like, you could definitely just drink this and enjoy it. And the acidity kind of keeps things so fresh that you want the next sip. But you definitely have a fun level of dimension. I'm curious, as a couple have put local, why local? Why would you say that this is something from Virginia? New World, why not? This one, where's you're saying, Jeff? Yeah, New World, why not for sure? Why New World? Why potentially Virginia? And is that a good thing? It should be, but there's a way that this is coming out kind of like, yeah, I think this could be Virginia. What makes you say so? Krista's saying Finger Lakes, question mark. That's possible. I haven't had a whole bunch of Chardonnay from the Finger Lakes, if we're still kind of centered on Chardonnay. Candy's saying French Chard from Kevin, and Kevin's saying French Chard. Candy thinks it's from the U.S., so you got a split decision there in your tasting. It could be, right? So this has a little bit of richness and some vibrancy and brightness. So if this was Old World and this was French, we would be talking about Burgundy most likely, and we get a little ripeness from this and that color and that deepness. So potentially not necessarily something like Chablis, although some riper vintages of Chablis lately have been expressing themselves in a way that's sort of not prototypically Chablis. So perhaps we're talking about something further south. I think generally speaking, using the Chris Shirley method, we wouldn't be tasting something from the Côte de Beaune, for example, in a village or a Premier Cru designation at this price point. So we might be in something like Puy Fouissé or the Macon or the Chalonnais, somewhere down that way, so further south. where they're trying to maintain some freshness by some winemaking hands, as well as getting a little bit of richness. So it could be Burgundy in that regard. But I think that's another reason why it could be more akin to something from Virginia. And Courtney's saying she thinks it's Virginia because she thinks she's tasted it at Field and Maine before, which is very possible. We like to pour our Virginia numbers. I like a lot of what I get from Virginia in that regard. Oftentimes you get some of that ripeness and that acidity, and it gives you a midpoint. Erica's saying it's Virginia because she drinks mostly Virginia, and it seems reminiscent perhaps of what she drinks. There is something familiar, right? That's kind of nice. That's interesting if you drink wine often enough from a particular place, and there's a familiarity that comes, and there's a profile that you begin to understand in your palate as representative of that particular place. Doesn't sound weird. I have that same experience, and I continually strive to try to figure out how to describe that for those particular regions, right? We've said it here before, this tastes like or smells like Italian white. And there's a profile, but what are the key identifiers of that profile? And so I was kind of pressing you all, trying to figure out whether or not there was some key identifiers that made you think Virginia. Kathy's on board with the New World idea. I think, too, it's fun in this regard when we're talking about whether it's New World, Old World, and some of us can't quite parse out one way or another, and yet you could make an argument comfortably for both. It makes a really compelling wine, especially when it's New World, right? So it gives it sort of a leg up if that's the case. So Jeff saying, Mickey saying what it's not. It's not Italian, it's not Portugal, it's not Spanish. I think it's a good way to go too, right? The deductive process isn't necessarily about trying to guess what it is or trying to determine what it is. You can certainly start by saying what it isn't. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it's not. And if it's not those things, and it could be Burgundy, but probably isn't, we can definitely kind of center more on the New World. So let's presume it's Chardonnay from the New World. Virginia's in the running. We were talking about Virginia. What about California, Oregon? What about Chile? What about Australia? Any particular reason we should consider those particular areas as opposed to Virginia, aside from the comments about it being familiar? I mean, you could get the cool climate quality of this wine, right? So to kind of recap per Amy's comment, we had honey, we had apple, we had pear, pineapple, all off the bat. We had a little floral quality, a hint of some nut elements on the nose, a deeper golden color, not deep, a medium golden color, excuse me. And we were wondering how that would translate then to the palate. We had some high acid on this particular wine. We definitely have some lactic acid, and we think we have a little bit of malic acid, maybe a little bit of leesy quality. There's a creaminess in the middle. There's a lot more apple on the palate. There's definitely a greater showing of the wood on the palate by way of sort of a nut butter quality to things. So this is a wine that gives us a lot of Chardonnay descriptors, and there's a tension and an interplay between the acid because there's some that's real bright and some that's a little bit softer and muted. There's a creaminess overall to the whole of the wine. So I think there's a chance that we're looking at some winemaking here. So that's kind of the recap. And I think you can consider Australia. Mornington Peninsula, for example, makes some Australia with some high acid, some Chardonnay in Australia, with some high acid. Dry Petit Manseng from Chaps is another very interesting comment from Amy. We talked about a Dry Petit Manseng, especially with the wood profile that comes from his wines. They see some barrel and some lees aging and stirring. The pineapple certainly would be accounted for in that regard. The acid's really high, higher than most wines. It has a nice oak integration, and it is dry. It doesn't have any kind of greenness or grassiness, so the familiarity for folks is putting us closer maybe to Virginia. Michael Chaps makes his Petit Manseng with sort of a Burgundian focus, and so giving us that idea of it being very French, but perhaps Virginia would make a lot of sense from a producer like Michael Chaps. Yeah, that would be cool. There's something that's very Chardonnay about this to me, and yet with a wine like Michael Shapps' Petit Manseng, there's something very much like that wine as we're tasting this. Ripe Alsace, the alcohol is a little higher. You can definitely feel a little bit of it. It's well integrated. It wears it extremely well. But I'm not getting a particular quality of, say, Riesling for it to be Alsace Riesling. Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, maybe. But not. It is more familiar than those wines. So what do you think, folks? Old world, new world? That acid is really persistent. That's Petit Manseng acid, huh? She's not going to tell me. Nor should she. It's tasty. Who else is making a wine like this? You know, the Virginia Petit Manseng is a good call. Why not Chardonnay Viognier, coming from the Swanbergs? Yeah, I mean, I think the Viognier Chardonnay wouldn't give us this acid. Chardonnay could give us some of it for sure, but I think there's a real chance there's got to be a fascinating wine if it was maybe a little Chardonnay Petit Manseng, for example, or a blend. I know that Michael in the past has made sort of a wine, what does he call it, Odette, I think, that has Viognier and Petit Manseng. That would be kind of potentially interesting, but we're still like, I'm not getting as much kind of expressive floral quality off this like you might get from Viognier. I think, Candy, you're saying this in the PM floral notes. Yeah, sometimes you get floral. For me, it's more about that pineapple quality, and that's there, although a little bit muted. And I think that's an argument for, say, a Michael Shapps style production of Petit Manseng, which is a little bit more savory, is a little bit more oak, is it has a ton of acidity. But Kathy, you're not picking up the acidity from Petit Manseng? No? I mean, I'm getting it just from the beginning to the end as a core of acidity. That's the part of the prominent experience of the wine for me on the palate is the acidity. It's like acidity first, and then there's a fleshiness, a richness that comes in around it, sort of in the second third and the third third of the experience. The first third is like acid, boom, and then the final experience of the wine for me is a lingering fruit quality, a little bit of like a nuttiness, and then a rush of acidity. I'm salivating, like nearly drooling. And so I think that has an argument for me going to Petit Manseng. I like that early on call, and that was kind of something that I was holding on to. So, New World Petit Manseng. Jeff's noting that Adrian's getting the acidity. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Adrian. And great to see you today, by the way. Or was it yesterday? All the days are one for me, I apologize. The color's throwing you off, Rick, for Petit Manseng. Fair point. What about if it was barrel-aged? What do you think about that? And Isabel, I agree. I think it might be too acidic for a Chardonnay. It would just be a really racy Chardonnay. A Chardonnay that had such a persistent acidity and the ripeness. So I think that's what I'm going to go. That's why I'm leaning toward Petit Manseng. The descriptor, as Kathy's then recapping once again too, with the honey, the nut element, the pineapple, the acidity, it's sort of Petit Manseng for me. And that would be a cool grape for Julie and Tony to pull for us to taste by way of Virginia. And so I'm pretty comfortable, I think, putting this probably more like 17, right? So not 18. I don't know that it would be 19. It'd be a little bit early. So 17, Petit Manseng, Virginia, Michael Shapps. Let's do that. That's going to be my guess. The Walsh Petit Manseng, I was thinking about that too. It keeps fleshing out for me as I keep trying it in time, and I remember just tasting it a month or so ago, maybe, and it was more fleshy. It started out a little bit leaner, but I'm not sure that that it had the sort of nuttiness and the barrel element that we're picking up here. But I could be wrong, and that wine is really, really cool too, and changing. Rick's saying that it could push Vidal. I mean, Vidal can have some high acid, but I don't usually get like this dimension to a Vidal. If this is Vidal, it's pretty neat. Somebody put some effort into making this Vidal, which doesn't usually return in the dollar category, but that'd be pretty cool. This is a very fine Vidal, if that's the case. And it's pretty young. Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, I think it's 17. If we're talking about Virginia, I don't know that, I could be wrong there. But yeah, I'm going to go with 7. I'm going to go with Petit Manseng, Virginia, 2017. And by way of knowing a few producers making Petit Manseng in Virginia, I'm going to say it's a Chaps. So that would be awesome if we got a chance to drink that wine. And if we're wrong, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong on this one because this is pretty tasty and I'm really excited to know what this is. I was talking with the Foxes last night about Fred Damon, one of his tastings. He noted that he's a master sommelier and a great taster, and he doesn't remember the ones he gets. He remembers the ones that he doesn't because he usually learns something about it in the process. And Katie's noting that Kevin is guessing Vouvray. Yeah, dry Vouvray. I mean, that also fits all the bills. High acid, honey, all that quality. We kind of walked away thinking it was a little more familiar in this context, but yeah, we have to consider Chenin Blanc, and we didn't necessarily spend a lot of time with that, but all of the descriptors are present for potential. I don't usually get as much pineapple with Chenin Blanc, and that's kind of why I'm comfortable going Petit Manseng, but you can get some of that element for sure, and it's not the most prominent pineapple punch. It's more about that appley element, which is there. There isn't kind of the lanolin element, that woolliness that you might pick up, and sometimes a lemon curd quality that you'll get from Chenin Blanc, so I'm not going there, but pretty cool. Erica's saying that it isn't a Cana Petit Manseng. That's cool. So I'm going to go Chaps 17 Petit Manseng. It's right here. Let's see. It's the Walsh Petit Manseng, Northgate. Oh, awesome. How cool is that? This wine continues to evolve. Each time I've tried this, it's gotten better and better and that much more exciting. I think Kathy did just call that, and she said 17. This is 18, actually, too, which is all the more cool. This is cool. Sarah, are you still with us? Yes, you are. That's awesome. Maybe I should have guessed that as you came and joined the chat this evening. Sarah, this is cool. Like, this wine keeps changing and evolving. I last had it when we had it in the lineup with Chaps and with Early Mountains variation. And maybe in that mix, too, it showed a little bit brighter and more vibrant. This got great acidity and the vibrancy is still there, but there's a wonderful kind of quality of merging by way of the potential oak. Did you guys use oak? Do you want to chime in and tell us? Does it say that here? 100% oak, yeah. So, and I think that's really cool. This is super neat. Yeah, this is great. So, tasty wine, right? Really cool, but also kind of a great tell, or a great experience and great lesson in the way of what Petit Manseng is starting to do in Virginia, where it's making you think, is this Burgundy? Is this Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley? Is this Petit Manseng from Virginia? Is it Australian Chardonnay? How cool is that? We don't have this nailed down, right? Although we got to Petit Manseng from Virginia, which is really, really good. So we did well on that. But in terms of having its own identifiable style, it's joining a class of wines that's really exciting and very compelling. And with this acid and this profile, a lot of Lee's work, per Sarah's note there, and some neutral oak, this has got some potential to age. And as I've just noted, I mean, I've tried it 4 times in the last several months, and it keeps getting better. So what's it going to do in a couple of years? That's going to be the exciting part. If you can keep it around until then, it's pretty darn tasty. I'm sure Sarah has some probably on hand, Sarah and Nate, but we have a few bottles left if you're interested. So it's here and available. Boy, I'm taking the rest of that. That's delicious. So thank you all. I hope this worked out a little bit better this evening by way of the connection, and I was not just a screensaver the whole night. But I have been quite comfortable in understanding that I have a face for radio much more so than video, and so if it was just my dulcet voice coming through the airwaves to you, I don't think that's a big problem, because you had this wine to work with the whole while. But I had you to work with, and I'm grateful for that. Thanks very much for joining us again this evening. We'll continue to do this each week. Thursdays, we have all of the wines in place for the next couple of weeks, and we have just procured as of tomorrow, I think, the wines through August 20th, and August 13th, we're going to do Tony. I'm going to put Tony in the hot seat again. I picked out a wine. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really good one. I might join him up here and see how it goes. We'll be together. I'll know it, and he won't. We got a little red number. It's going to be great. They're all great. They're all great. But I get to turn the table a little bit, and it'll be fun. And thank you, Chris, for the note of confidence on the cabanas. Those are super fun. For those of you that don't know, we built some cabanas in the backyard. We built 7 platforms. George, our contractor, who helped us build the restaurant, did an amazing job in a week of constructing 7 platforms for us. And we've got some space out back now with some tents overhead that we're calling little cabanas. They have 2 sides on them, and you can sit very well socially distanced and comfortable outside, unless it's a deluge rainstorm like we had yesterday. But they cleaned up pretty fast and cleared up pretty fast, and so they're a comfortable spot where a number of guests have dined already and are doing so just now. This means I'm back in the kitchen and producing, and you shouldn't push down trash when there are open tin cans in it. They cut you. So back in action. We are back in action, fully rolling, continuing to taste and to now serve food and wine to you inside, outside, and to go, depending on what your interest or need is. So look forward to seeing all of you in time, certainly via this place, but also here at the restaurant. A number of you have had the chance to do that already, and thank you to those of you who have. So cheers, everybody. Minimum of 2 for reservation? Yeah, that sounds good. The cabanas are set up with 1 table in each of them right now. They can also have potentially 2 tables in each as we start to figure this out a little bit more, and we have one larger one that's just being finished up now that could probably have about 8 or 10 people in it as we figure out how to operationalize these. But let us know what your needs are and your interests, and we're open from 11:30 to 8:30, so you can do sort of a traditional lunchtime hour or dinner hour. But if you're out and about, hiking, running errands, whatever, and you want to pop in for some day drinking and some umami burger eating, that is a possibility now too. So the only day we're closed is Tuesday, and otherwise we're open from 11:30 to 8:30. And we look forward to seeing you at some point in that time. Sarah, Nate, thank you very much for this wonderful wine this week. Tremendous work. Keep it up. And from a vintage that was a challenge, this is a wine that is spectacular. Cheers, everybody. Till the next time.